let's move on to we're nearing the hour mark here on the show. Just four more clips to share with you. First, I mentioned at the top of the show, Zac Woodfin, who is the Titans director of player performance, sports performance, I think. The sports science guy, weight room guy, Zac Woodfin, director of sports performance. He is now a part of our media gaggle time with the assistant coaches, which is so cool. That certainly was never the case with the Vrabel regime. And it's going to allow us for some insight on guys' health, guys, nutrition, and like what they're mainly. I think the number one development here is we'll get to ask questions about specific guys and specific routines, but we'll get a glimpse behind the curtain as to what the team's philosophy is when it comes to sports science, injury analytics, recovery, rest, and like what's the word I'm looking for? Load management. I'm like, it's an NBA term, the NBA playoffs, load management, all of those things. What do they think about these things? And that's really cool to have an actual professional who's the one behind the scenes making those decisions, informing that policy for the team, be the guy to talk to us about it. So 2 clips from him today, and I did not catch everything he said because I was like, who is this guy? I don't recognize the guy. I'm gonna talk to some other guys right now, and then I hear it's Zac Woodfin. He's the director of sports performance. Okay, let me go and listen to this guy. This first one from him is about when he meets with players who have preconceived notions as to what's best for their health, best for their recovery, best for their bodies, how he meets them in the middle, how he's able to get them to buy in to his program. And here was his answer.
Yeah. So a lot of players obviously have their own, personal strength coaches that they've been in the league a long time. Maybe they've worked with somebody somewhere else they really like. And so for me as a good leader, I've got to be a good listener. I've got to ask them the right questions, and I've got to have a humble approach. It can't be all about me and what I want to do. If you're a 5, 6, 7-year vet and you're having a lot of success doing something else, then me as the leader has to understand and have the humility to say, you know what, like, I'm going to meet you where you are with that. Because again, it's not about me. And if you feel great, because it's all about the player being confident, okay, and playing at a high level and staying on the field. And if they've been able to do that with what they're doing, then I meet them where they're at and we work together on it. It's a mutual relationship.
Well, the second answer is interesting. Yeah, he was asked about soft tissue injuries, which the Titans have dealt with significantly in the past 3 seasons. I lose track. Many seasons they've been dealing with the soft tissue plague, the pox on this house. And Zac, what's your philosophy on soft tissue injuries? How do they come about? How do you handle them? What's the process like? And here was his answer.
Well, as a performance professional, I definitely believe that you can do things to mitigate soft tissue injury. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of evidence-based protocols, but it's multifactorial. It's not just the training, it's about hydration, it's about how well our guys sleep, so teaching them about sleep and recovery. It's about how we practice, so Callie and I have a great relationship in terms of talking about practices needing to be undulated. And what I mean by that is some practices are very high demanding speeds, some are medium and some are low. And so in understanding how to go between those practices, understanding how to warm up properly, understanding how to activate, understanding the asymmetries guys may have. So of course there are things that we can do to mitigate the chance of soft tissue injuries, but again, it's a very fast, violent game, and the speeds that some of these guys are running and the force that some of these guys are putting through their joints and their tissue, sometimes strains and pulls happen, but we're going to do everything possible that we know scientifically and evidence-based to reduce that, and we're gonna let it rip from there.
Such a cool answer, and an even cooler answer came right after this. And like the fool that I am, I walked away before I got a chance to hear it. But the clip is on Twitter and from I think Buck Rising had it if you want to go and listen to it. He elaborates on the asymmetries the guys have. Yeah, man. And this is something that I was illuminated to. That's the wrong way to say that. So something that was made clear to me for the first time. That's how I want to say it. Last season, when the Saints had a story come out. I don't know how I found this, but it was a preseason thing on some Saints players who had realized like that one leg was a hair longer than the other, or one calf muscle was 17% stronger than the other. And they started training according to that to prevent injury and to strengthen their overall athletic profile. That's a new, as far as I'm aware, a relatively new area of sports medicine and sports science that they're, you know, dialing into here, using, I'd imagine, GPS tracking and I don't know, like monitors they put on the body while you're on the treadmill. Or so I don't know how they track it exactly. Biometrics of some sort that they collect somehow. Whatever it is, they're able to tell if you've got, you know, one hamstring that is 27% less load bearing than the other on average when you're out there practicing, and say, okay, well, that means your other hamstring is taking on an excess workload. We got to get that other hamstring stronger so that you don't strain this other one. Like, that's really fascinating sports science. And they're implementing here at the Titans. Do we know that wasn't the case before this with the Vrabel regime? No, but did we ever hear anything like that? Like even remotely like that? No, never. So that's really cool. And I can't wait to dive into some nerdy articles about cutting edge NFL sports science to take to Zac whenever we get to speak to them and ask him and rack his brain and see if we get some sick answers, because that's the nerd in me. And I'm so stoked that he's available to us. Should provide some interesting answers. And I'm curious to see how much he's able to talk about guys in particular when they're going through injuries this season. We shall see. 2 more clips for you. Some odds and ends here, and then we will wrap it up. This first one is from Tyke Tolbert once again. I asked him about Jaquan Jackson, like I said I did earlier in the show. You guys drafted Jaquan in the 6th round of this draft. There were some interesting players on the board, like a Malik Washington, like a Cornelius Johnson, like a Johnny Wilson. Why Jaquan? What'd you see in this guy? And he was down there at Jaquan's pro day at Tulane, clearly liked what he saw. What was that exactly? Here's what Tyke had to say.
Like you said, there's a lot of different options on the board, whatever, but we're very pleased when we got Jaquan. He has a speed element. You know, we wanted to get faster with his room, and he's one of the guys we drafted that has a speed element. He has some return ability, you know, pump return, kick return, whatever. And just with the ball in his hands, he makes a lot of plays. So he'll be able to do a lot of things for us, whether it's, you know, in a slot, maybe we can do some things with him on some gadget stuff, some speed sweeps and stuff, because when the ball in his hands, he's really good with it. So we need those kind of guys.
You don't see him as an outside guy potentially. It's going to be a slot role.
Well, I don't want to say that right now because we got to get him in here and see how he can learn. See, you know, I coached Steve Smith in Carolina. I'm not trying to compare the two, but he was a smaller guy, stronger guy. So and he played outside. So it didn't, you know, it depends on the package we have and what plays we have, you know, where we can fit guys.
Coach, different elements.
Fair enough on Jaquan Jackson. And so there's your confirmation. They don't really, let's be honest, they don't see him as an outside guy because he's not an outside guy. He's undersized. But listen, I cut him off. I think I spoke over him there. He does not see Steve Smith as the comp for Jaquan Jackson, to be clear. He's not comparing them there. But he does bring him up, and that's an example of a guy that overachieved. So there's that. Like Rashawn said, next Steve Smith, you heard it here first. Sure, we'll roll with that. Let's move on here to the last question. This is Randy Jordan. Let me introduce you to Randy. Cool guy. I spoke to him one-on-one today and asked him about the difference. He's the running back coach, by the way. So I asked him about Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard, having them both in the same room. I compared it to like last year with Tyjae Spears and Derrick Henry. You take one look at them and you say, okay, clearly those guys do different things. They have different roles, different strengths and weaknesses. They complement each other. With a Spears and a Pollard, not quite as clear, right? So what differentiates them? Or maybe are they a little bit redundant and it's just the fact of having a stable of guys that do the same thing? What's the approach here? What makes them different? And here was Randy Jordan's answer.
I mean, you know, you look at them, you know, obviously they both can catch a football. You can do things with them in terms of in the passing game. You know, you're trying to create matchups. They can run the football between the tackles. But the thing I love about them is they can catch a football and you butt a tackle. You know, they can turn a check down into a big play. So what I'm trying to say is basically, you're not counting touches in terms of handing the ball off. I'm counting touches in my head in terms of actual touches, meaning when they're catching the football out of space on checkdowns and on design plays where it's supposed to get the ball. So in that respect, I'm excited to see those guys feed off each other and challenge each other to be the best players they can be.
All right, so there we go. There's your answer. Not seen as the same guy, not going to be counting touches in the running game as much as counting touches in the passing game, kind of alluding to these guys being options in the passing game, strong options in the passing game, which we know they're both capable of doing. You could have questioned whether or not that was a part of the game plan, considering how many receivers are in the fold now. But this is a passing team, folks. They're going to be passing to tight ends, receivers, running backs alike. Exciting season coming up.